bonjour.
Hi, hello.
Bonjour Orlan. Donc
Hello,
avant
Orlan.
de commencer,
Bonjour Alain Quemin.
voilà,
Hello,
donc je vais
Alain
me
Quemin.
présenter rapidement. Donc je
I'm going to
m'appelle Alain Quemin, je
introduce
suis
myself quickly.
essentiellement
I am
sociologue de
Alain
l'art.
Quemin. I'm an
Je suis
art
également donc
sociologist,
journaliste,
also a
critique,
journalist,
commissaire
critic,
d'exposition. J'en dirai deux mots tout à
exhibition
l'heure. Et
connoisseur,
puis pratiquement ma fonction
and
principale dans
my
l'existence,
main
c'est d'être un grand admirateur
role
d'Orlan.
is
Voilà.
to
Donc
be a big
Orlan,
admirer of
on pourrait
Orlan.
dire d'une certaine façon qu'on
In
ne la
certain
présente
way,
plus, mais par ailleurs,
she
je pense
doesn't
qu'il est
need
quand même
introduction,
nécessaire de
but
faire un petit rappel
it would be probably a
sur
good idea to have a reminder
différentes réalisations qui ont été
of
accomplies
the
par
work that
Orlan.
she's
Et puis
done.
ensuite, bien entendu, je lui donnerai
And of
la
course,
parole
I
pour qu'elle
will
se présente
hand it
elle-même à son
over
tour
to her so she
de
can
façon
introduce herself
complètement indépendante.
in
Donc
her
dans
own
deux
way.
ans, je pense que c'est
For 2
quelque chose qui
years,
mérite vraiment d'être souligné.
I think we need
Nous
to
allons fêter
highlight that
le
we, 2
60e
years ago,
anniversaire qu'on vient de rappeler,
that we
qui
just
a un petit
brought
peu
up,
été à l'origine de cette carrière absolument
which was at
incroyable
the
qui dure depuis
origin of
déjà
this
6
incredible
décennies
career that
et qui
she's
n'est pas
had,
finie, bien entendu.
which is still
C'est
continuing.
Orlan accouche d'elle-même. Et
And
là, je ne sais pas
Orlan
si
gives
on
birth
peut
to
donc
herself.
montrer
Perhaps
cette
we can
première image.
show you this first image.
Je demande à la régie, est-ce qu'on pourrait nous montrer Orlan
Can
accouche
we show
d'elle-même?
Orlan giving birth to herself?
Non?
No?
Alors, là, j'ai la présentation d'Orlan, mais j'avais
I
demandé
have
qu'on
the
mette cette
introduction, but I
première
did
image.
want to see that first image.
Bon, ce ne sera pas possible.
Can't be done?
Bon, bah,
Perhaps
écoutez, on
later.
va avancer.
Okay,
Donc,
well, let's
Orlan
carry on.
accouche d'elle-même, qui est
So
une œuvre
Orlan giving
qu'Orlan
birth
a
to herself, which
réalisée,
is a
que je
work
vois moi ici.
which I
Un
can see
ado
here.
rêvé, Orlan accouche d'elle-même.
We had it.
Une
It
toute
came
jeune
up.
fille
A young
allongée
woman
avec
lying
un
down
mannequin
with
auquel
a
elle donne vie.
dummy that she was giving
Non,
birth to.
là on avance trop.
That's too far ahead in the presentation. Too many images far ahead.
Oui, oui, bien sûr. Bien sûr, bien sûr. Toute première œuvre. Bon, je vais
So her
essayer
first
de
work.
laisser la possibilité. Voilà, on l'a maintenant.
Here we
On l'a à
go.
l'écran, mais je voudrais bien
We can see it on our
également,
screen.
vous,
C'est
Can you?
Orlan
qui apparaissent.
accouche d'elle-même, A-I-M-E.
Voilà, Orlan accouche d'elle-même. Et
So the
donc cette œuvre est
spelling
particulièrement
of
importante,
the
c'est
name
véritablement
is
programmatique.
also
Et
a little
c'est
different.
l'idée selon laquelle Orlan, à un
So
moment,
the idea is
alors
that at
qu'elle
one
était
point in
encore toute
time,
jeune,
Orlan,
a
who was very
décidé
young,
donc
decided
de devenir
to
complètement maîtresse de son
become the
destin,
master of her
maîtresse de
destiny
son œuvre.
and her
Et
work.
c'est une œuvre qui est d'autant plus
So the work
remarquable
is even
que
more
tout de même,
remarkable.
en 1964, non
In
seulement Orlan avait
1964,
16 ans, mais
Orlan
la
was 16,
majorité en France était
but
de 21 ans. Donc
the
c'était vraiment une toute jeune fille, c'était une mineure,
adulthood was
véritablement,
21 at
qui
that
a
time.
pris son destin en main pour
So
créer
she really took her destiny
ces
in her
œuvres
own hands to
absolument
create these works
remarquables.
as a
Alors
minor.
évidemment, Orlan, je pense que beaucoup de gens connaissent
Although many
également les grandes
people
séries
know
qu'elle a créées.
her
Je
great,
peux en
her
rappeler
famous
quelques-unes.
series, the
La
largest series
tentative
of
de
work,
sortir du cadre, les tentatives de
the
sortir du cadre, les
tentative of
bracelets
coming out of
baroques,
the frame,
toutes les séries avec les draps du trousseau, et on va
all
en
the
parler
series
un
with
petit peu
with
pendant
the
la
sheets,
discussion, les différents mesures également,
various
le baiser de l'artiste, bien
the
entendu.
measures.
C'est
It's
important
called
que je le
the
dise,
Kiss of the
je montrer
Artist,
qu'avant le
Baiser
baiser
de
de l'artiste,
l'artiste,
qui est une œuvre iconique,
which is
Orlan
an
avait déjà
iconic
une
work
carrière
of
très
Orlan.
importante derrière
And
elle.
by that
Les différentes
time, when it came
séries
out,
de
she already had
création
quite a long career
également,
behind her.
la série de l'Opéra de Pékin, qui mêle
The
donc
the Peking Opera
l'immortalité à son œuvre,
series,
l'Orlanoïde, le célèbre robot,
L'Orlanoïde,
et les
the
fiches d'Orlan,
robot,
les femmes qui pleurent, et inévitablement,
the Femmes qui pleurent,
lorsque je
Women
mentionne,
crying.
j'en oublie forcément.
And of course, there are many
Donc
I've
Orlan également a
forgotten.
un regard quand même
Orlan
d'actualité
is
vibrante
back on the
depuis
front of the
quelques années,
scene in the
notamment
last few
en
years,
étant représenté par sa
why
galerie,
being
la galerie
represented
Cesson et Bénétière, qui
by
l'a
her
présenté
gallery
deux
Cesson
fois en
Benetier,
solo show à
who
Paris,
brought her
qui l'a présenté
twice as
également
solo
à
shows in
Lyon, qui
Paris
l'a
and then
présenté
Lyon,
à New York
presented her in New
et qui va
York,
prochainement la présenter
and
également au Luxembourg.
Et
will
un
be
solo
doing it
show
in
à
Luxembourg.
Westerville.
J'allais en parler après, voilà. Donc elle a également une grande exposition aux abattoirs
So
à Toulouse
there's also
cette
a
année, une grande
large exhibition at
rétrospective.
the
Deux
abattoirs
œuvres
in
majeures lui ont
Toulouse. Two
permis
major
également
works
d'entrer dans les
were
collections du Centre Pompidou,
just
où elle était
brought
déjà
into the Centre
présente
Pompidou
quelques fois.
collection,
Et
where
donc
she
de
already had
plus en
some of her
plus, on
works.
s'intéresse à elle. Et puis l'an prochain, donc cette
But now it's
exposition
some
au Luxembourg
installations,
sur plus de
and
2000 mètres
in
carrés,
Luxembourg
mais
on
aussi à
2,000
Vienne,
square
pas
meters,
Vienne en
and in
France, mais Vienne en
Vienna,
Autriche,
in
et puis
Austria as well
également à
next
Sao
year,
Paulo,
and Sao Paulo,
à Sao Paulo, où elle sera exposée au CESC.
and she'll be at the
Exposition
CESC
qui tient particulièrement à cœur, puisqu'avec une collègue brésilienne,
It's
Ana Paula Simeone,
with Ana Paula
je serai
Simone, a
co-commissaire.
Brazilian
Et une chose que j'aimerais quand même
colleague. I'll be
signaler,
the
c'est que Orlan,
co-curator of
qui a
that
été exposée dans la
exhibition.
principale institution
And she will
de la
be
principale
exhibited
ville
in the
latine-américaine
main
pour l'art contemporain,
institution
Sao
of the
Paulo, et
main
qu'elle va arriver
institution
après
in
des
Latin
artistes comme
America,
Marina Abramovic, Olafur
such
Eliasson et
in
bien
the
d'autres.
footsteps
Donc
of
vraiment,
Marina
le projet a été accepté
Abramovich
tout de
and
suite.
other
Dès que nous avons contacté
big
le
name
CESC,
artists.
pour eux,
As soon as
c'était
we
évident.
contacted the
Ils
CESC,
voulaient montrer
they
Orlan.
absolutely wanted
Et c'est
to
une
show
exposition
Orlan,
dont le projet a été accepté sans aucun
and
euro d'argent public.
they
Donc,
were
une véritable
they accepted the project without
motivation,
a
véritable
a
désir
single
d'enfant
euro
de
of
la part
public
des
money.
responsables brésiliens.
The
Et donc,
Brazilian
cette exposition va s'appeler Devenir Orlan,
directors were
création
very
et empowerment.
enthusiatic,
Elle aura lieu
and
en plein pendant la
creation.
Biennale
This
de Sao
exhibition is
Paulo.
called
Donc, au moment où toute
Becoming
l'Amérique
Orlan,
latine sera
Creation
présente pour
Empowerment.
fêter cette très grande
And so
manifestation.
she will be there
Alors,
also
mon premier souvenir d'art
for that
contemporain
exhibition.
également, je
My first
l'illustrerai brièvement,
memories
c'est
of
lorsque j'ai
contemporary
découvert
art was
Orlan à
when
la
I saw
télévision quand j'étais
Orlan on
petit.
television when
En
I was young.
1977,
In
j'avais 9 ans.
1977, I
Et
was
donc, à la
9,
télévisée,
and at
j'ai vu
the
le baiser de l'artiste.
on the news, I saw
Je
the
descends
baiser de
d'un petit
l'artiste,
village,
Kiss
je
of the
suis
Artist.
lyonnais
I came
d'origine, mais
from
simplement
Lyon,
pour signaler qu'à
not
l'époque,
from, but
l'art
at that
contemporain
time,
n'était pas aussi
contemporary
présent qu'il
art
l'est aujourd'hui.
was
Et
not
même
as
quand on est
present
à
as it
Lyon,
was
il y avait
today, as
très
it
peu
is today.
d'occasions
And
de
in
voir l'art
Lyon,
contemporain. Alors,
there weren't
pensez
many
à une
occasions
pièce
to
de
see
Saint-Louis.
contemporary art.
On pouvait donc rouler un
With
pétain à cette femme magnifique.
for
C'était
5
French
francs, you
kiss.
could kiss,
French kiss.
Mais les
you
prix
could
ont
French
beaucoup
kiss that
augmenté.
lady.
Voilà.
But
Mais déjà à
that's
l'époque,
true. But the
c'était quelque
prices
chose
are much
d'absolument
higher now to do
incroyable.
that.
Et donc,
And I thought it was
j'ai
incredible.
découvert l'art
And I
contemporain grâce à Orlan.
I discovered
Donc également
contemporary
très
art
fort
through
présent avec
Orlan,
ses
thanks to
œuvres dans les
her.
foires.
Je plais aux jeunes, vous voyez.
Voilà.
The
Et donc,
the young people like
aujourd'hui,
me, you
je vous
see.
invite toutes et tous, si vous ne l'avez
So I
pas encore
invite you
fait,
all,
à
if you
aller
haven't done it yet,
découvrir donc
to go and
l'œuvre
discover
d'Orlan
her
sur le
work
stand A18 ici
on the
à l'entrée
on the stand
de Paris Photo.
A18 at the
Elle
entrance
est en
of
solo
Paris
show à
Photo.
Fistmasters il y a un
She had
mois.
a
Sa galerie
solo show
va
at Fistmasters a
représenter un
month
solo
ago.
show avec des œuvres
So now there's a
particulièrement
solo
importantes,
show
beaucoup
with
d'œuvres
particularly important
historiques
works,
durant
historical
la
works
période de Paris
from the
Photo,
from
donc
the
en A18. Et également,
here
je
in
vous signale
at Paris
donc la
Photo.
monographie
And
d'Orlan qui
also you
figure
can see
devant
the
moi
monography, the
sur l'une des
books
deux tables basses qui
on
sont
these
devant moi. Donc,
coffee tables here in
Orlan
front of
fera la
me.
signature de son ouvrage.
She will
J'ai
sign
raconté
her
tout sur
work,
ma vie, tout sur mon
striptease,
art.
everything
Elle a
about my
publié chez
life and my
Gallimard, donc
art.
voilà un an. Gallimard, pardon, chez
So
Gallimard, voilà
it's
un
come
an,
out, published
qui
by
était donc
Gallimard 1 year
épuisé
ago,
et qui est
and
à
was
nouveau
sold out,
disponible. Voilà,
and
donc
is once again
c'est le livre
in
de Noël
print.
absolument incontournable pour toutes les
It's
familles françaises.
the
Un ouvrage
absolute
qui est assez
best
fascinant.
Christmas
Orlan
present for any
illustre
French
avec une
family.
sincérité qui est extrêmement impressionnante,
It's
extrêmement
extremely
touchante.
impressive.
Ce n'est pas à mettre dans toutes les mains.
Voilà,
You
donc je
can't give
laisse
it to
maintenant
just
à Orlan
anyone,
le soin
though.
de se présenter.
Be careful
Parce
who
que
you
je
give
sais
it
qu'elle le
to.
fait généralement très bien.
I'm going to let
Ça
Orlan
permet déjà de
introduce
mettre
herself, and
sur
she
le doigt,
always does it very
un
well.
point très important de son œuvre.
Merci Alain Quemin pour
Thank you, Alain Quemin,
ce tapis rouge.
for this red
Je
carpet.
dois dire que je suis très très heureuse
I'm very happy
d'être exposée aussi
to
bien
be
par la
shown
galerie à l'entrée.
at the entrance
Et
here.
surtout très très heureuse, je viens de boire beaucoup de champagne.
I've had a lot of
parce qu'on a
champagne, so I'm
beaucoup
very
vendu.
happy because we've sold a
Je
lot of
suis
work
une
today.
vendue.
I'm sold. I've been
À part
sold.
ça,
And
je
except
dois
for
me
that,
présenter.
I have to present. I should introduce
Alors,
myself.
je suis Orlan,
I am Orlan,
entre autres,
amongst other things,
dans la mesure du
and
possible.
as much as I can
Et
be.
mon nom
And my name
s'écrit
is
chaque
written,
lettre
each letter
en capitale
in capitals,
parce que je ne veux pas
because I don't
qu'on me
want
fasse rentrer dans les rangs.
I don't want to be put
Qu'on me
in
fasse rentrer dans la
orders
ligne.
or on the line. I don't want to be lined up. It's very hard to not be put into line, pulled into line, but I like to fight for things that show important symbolically. In the media, it's always written, my name is always in capitals, and then they'll write it in small letters. It's very hard to push for that. I have to fight every day to keep my capital letters. Very fun, very amusing. I'd like to also say, I'm also labeled as a performance artist, and I feel that I'm just an artist without any labels. But often my performances are scandalous, such as The Kiss of the Artist and many others. And so that ends up on the front page of the paper and on television. And so when you come with a carat marble sculpture, you don't have the same headlines and the press that wants to talk to you. So that's why I've been put in the category of performance artists. However, I'm an artist who does not attach herself to any kinds of practice or technique or technology, old or new. What I like is saying very important things for the time by questioning phenomena of society, of course, after analyzing them, summarizing them, boiling them down. And I wonder, then I ask myself, what kind of style and material would be the most adapted to expressing and representing the ideas and give it a material existence for this concept. The concept of a work is the spine, and then the style and materials are the flesh. So I consider that I'm a conceptual artist who likes flesh, who likes color, who likes materials. But at the beginning, there's always a pure concept. And I always try in my works and always make them manifestos. All my works should be considered manifestos to me. Thank you, Orlan. So before I start speaking about performance and photography, to connect with what you've just revealed in your autobiography, could you remind us in which year you adopted the name Orlan, which brought us into a very personal universe, not just which was not the identity that you were given at birth, and this is auto-birthed, self-birth to create this artist that you've became little by little? And why did you choose the name Orlan? Some people know, others don't, and I think it's a very revealing story and gives important keys to understanding your work. I'll try to be quick, but it is a bit of a long story. So I was doing a psychoanalysis. At the third session, the psychoanalyst said one thing, just one thing. Next time, you will pay in cash. So I signed my final check. And when I signed the final check, he said, after all, next time, you will pay, you'll sign the check again. I'll take a check. So I was very confused as to why he was asking me. That was very contradictory. And I left and I tried to understand. I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about what happened in the session, what could I have said, and I couldn't think of why he would have said that. So the next session came around, and I did what most clients do. I compensated. So I did it in advance. I went to buy some shoes so that I could feel good in my own shoes. And when I signed the check to pay for my shoes, to feel well in my own shoes, and I saw what he had seen and that my parents hadn't seen, that I hadn't seen, that my friends, my lovers, and male and female hadn't seen. When you try to find the most beautiful signature, you do pages and pages of them looking for your signature, but the one I chose made me write Claire, morte. I came back to the psychoanalyst and I said, well, I'll never be dead, because my name meant dead. And he understood that I had seen what he had seen. So then, quite stupidly, I wanted to take the syllable that was positive in the name of morte, because there's really, in my letter, in my signature, that one of the letters was already absent. So I decided on Orlan. That was silly. I should have said or vif or rapide, lively or live, lively gold, lively. So there you go. My career could have taken a different, but Orlan sounds like slow, the second part. So she said that, so, or long. So then my career turns out being long instead of quick or vif, lively. So coming back to photography, could you say a little something? You talk a little touch on it in the book. What is the place of photography in your family when you were a child? It's something that became very accessible in the 60s when you created your first works. Phil Baudry, a sociologist, talked a lot about photography at the time. Were you surrounded by photography in your family? Was it an easy access for you? Of course not. In my family, and for myself, and for most people around us, in a tiny a city in provinces, we used photography only for weddings, maybe for a communion, for very important moments of life. And we didn't take photographs of ourselves. We went to see a photographer. We didn't have an Android phone where we could make an image of ourselves and do a selfie. You need to really think back to the period. So no, it was not everywhere. It was not all around me. I wasn't surrounded. And so how did you get a camera for your first performances? You needed to document your first performances. Did you look at the technical side? Were you interested in that? You want to just really do the performance and keep a trace of it. So true that performance and all the ephemeral works, like the installations I've done, are connected to photo and video, because you can't do without it. You need traces of the work. And if you don't keep it, it's really counterproductive. It actually, I didn't do much of photo at the beginning because it wasn't a common habit. Many of my performances weren't documented. Very stupid. I was a teacher in several art schools, and my students never lifted a finger if there wasn't, they would never do anything if there weren't many people photographing and videographers. But back in my beginnings, we weren't that way. We didn't think about what would come next. We wouldn't think about selling things. There were very few galleries. There weren't many art magazines even. And so we really had to put things in the context here.
Tout à fait différente que maintenant. Alors, il m'est arrivé ensuite.
And so, further along, later on, I did ask for people to photograph me.
Mais toute la première partie de mon œuvre a été très peu photographiée.
But not much was photographed in my work. And when there are traces of it, it's a miracle.
Vraiment penser à ça, quoi, vraiment.
You'd have to think about that. I think there are students, young students in the room here, who have trouble imagining in the 80s with Jacques Lang as Minister of Culture, art contemporary art wasn't what it was now. Contemporary art was something that was essentially for a few, a small circle of people, and very connotated. In the 90s, when I did the performance surgeries, because aesthetic surgery, plastic surgery was a phenomena in society that needed questioning. And it pulled on all the worst beauty stereotypes. And so at that time, I did a performance, surgery performance in New York, and we we transmitted it by satellite because there weren't any webcams. You can't imagine now that that was the case. There was no webcam. It seems insane to say that, but we had to do that. We had to rent a satellite connection, which cost a lot of money. It didn't always work. It wasn't always a good connection. We had to wait to have a result.
Donc, bien avoir conscience effectivement que la création des artistes, elle est complètement conditionnée par la dimension technologique et également par la présence, la reconnaissance dont il bénéficie, puisque souvent l'accès à la technologie va avoir un coût. Déjà, il faut que la technologie existe, mais en plus, il faut que l'artiste puisse avoir les moyens d'y accéder. La présence de public, c'est quelque chose qui pour toi est important dans les performances ou c'est relativement secondaire?
Alors, moi, ce qui m'intéresse effectivement dans la performance, c'est que c'est une nouvelle manière d'envisager son public. C'est une nouvelle manière de voir sa relation avec lui. Et ça, c'est vraiment, vraiment intéressant, quoi, le live, et que les gens ne puissent pas revivre deux fois la même chose. Mais il faut dire qu'à cette époque, la performance était très décriée. On disait que ce n'était pas de l'art, qu'il n'y avait pas de sublimation, et que dans la mesure où il n'y avait pas de sublimation, ce n'était pas de l'art, ça n'existait pas. Donc, vraiment, ça a été très long à ce que la performance arrive. Moi, j'ai créé un symposium de performance et de vidéo à Lyon, et effectivement,
reticent to new things, and no, performance was not widely accepted, was not was given the cold shoulder. But little by little, obviously, things became customary, became more widely accepted. And you know, if there's some type of vernissage, at any type of vernissage, there always has to now be a performance, even if it's not an interesting or even a good performance. It's not important at this point. There has to be some type of performance. So in Lyon, a lot of people reacted just with horror to my performance, saying that, oh my goodness, this is an art, and what is this? And this is why I created this performance symposium, to try to change people's minds. I think, and I often use this expression from the philosopher Nietzsche: we have art to not die of truth. And I think that performance during that era existed for that reason as well. So, for example, at the theater, an artist is on stage and is held sacred by the audience, but you are not like that. Have you ever been afraid that it wouldn't be that way? Have you ever been afraid of the public's reaction? No, I knew what people's reactions would be. There are three types of reactions, and they're always the same. First of all, there's someone who absolutely doesn't want to see anything of that nature and is shocked by it. There's the person who thinks that this is an art, this is just whatever. And then there are always a few people who are very enthusiastic by the performance and who always try to be surprised by art, by life, by everything. So did you start using video to produce performances, or do you believe it's photography that best captures these moments? I'm thinking of Marina Abramovic and her work. Art is beautiful. Artists must be beautiful. So she uses a lot of photography, though, to kind of capture her performance. So what is better adapted, photography, video, to capture the philosophy of performance?
la
I
leçon du baroque qui m'a beaucoup appris
retain the
et que
lesson
toute
of
mon
the
œuvre est basée sur
Baroque
cette leçon du
era,
baroque.
and all of my work
Et
is
le baroque nous demande pas de
based on
choisir
this rule. So Baroque
entre le bien
doesn't ask us to
ou
choose
le
between
mal.
good or
Et
evil.
d'ailleurs, la Sainte Thérèse du Bernin,
Saint Teresa
justement, est complètement en accord avec ce que je viens de dire,
agrees
quand
with
on
what
y
I
entend
say,
parler
because
et qu'on voit l'extase de Sainte
if
Thérèse,
we see the Saint
qui
Teresa in
jouit
ecstasy,
de la
who's
flèche
actually
d'orange
who
dans
is in
une extase
ecstasy,
qui est érotique,
being pierced by the arrow, it's not only
extatique.
erotic, it's
Donc
ecstatic.
le baroque,
So the Baroque
effectivement, nous
era
enlève ce ou qui nous oblige à sataniser une des parties.
takes
Alors que la
away, takes
photo,
this satanic element away from everything. It's
la
not,
vidéo,
I'm not going to say it's
c'est effectivement
photography or
D'accord.
video. It's photography and
J'ai évoqué
video.
là une autre performeuse
I also
incontournable.
mentioned
Vous
another
êtes trois grandes divas,
performer.
d'une certaine
I'd
manière,
say you
qui
the
ont marqué
three
la performance
divas
baroque
who have really
à partir des
made
années
your mark
60,
on
mais également
performance
par la suite.
since the 60s
Orlan,
and,
Marina
and
Abramovic,
to
Vali
today. So
Export.
Orlan,
Est-ce que vous vous
Vali
connaissiez à
Export,
l'époque? Est-ce qu'il y
Marina
avait un sentiment de
Abramovich.
communauté?
Do
Ou est-ce
you
que vous
know
avez
each
parfois
other? Have
découvert des
you
œuvres assez
known each other? Have
proches,
you met each
mais
other?
ne sachant pas ce que
Or have
faisaient
you been
ces
able to
artistes
create
majeurs
work
dans un
that
pays
can
qui n'était
be,
pas le
for
vôtre?
certain aspects, similar,
il n'y avait
but
pas
without
webcam.
knowing each
pas
other, without
Android que j'ai
discussing?
dans ma
No,
poche, enfin, que j'avais
we didn't
tout à
have
l'heure.
webcams or
Donc,
anything like that.
on ne se connaissait pas. C'est
So no,
hallucinant, mais
we
personne ne peut
didn't know
comprendre
each
ça.
other, and
Je
no
prends
one
par
can
exemple
really
le cas de
understand it.
Vali
It's
Export.
difficult to
Il y
accept.
a une dizaine d'années, elle m'a
So about
invité
10
à
years
faire une
ago,
conférence, à
I was
donner une
invited
conférence
to give a
dans
talk
l'université où elle enseignait à Berlin.
at the
Et
university in Berlin where she teaches
tout à
or
coup,
where
on
she
s'est
taught,
rendu compte l'une et l'autre
and we
qu'on avait
realized
fait beaucoup de choses
that we had
à des dates
done
similaires
so
sans
many
se connaître,
similar things
parce que
without
son
knowing
œuvre
each
n'était pas
other,
diffusée et que
because
la mienne
her
non plus.
work was not really
Et donc,
widely
ça,
known and mine
c'est
either.
très difficile d'expliquer ça.
And it's
Oui,
very
et le
difficult
fait,
to
en particulier, si
explain.
je prends l'exemple de Valley Export,
So if you look at
toutes
Valley
deux, vous
Export,
avez choisi d'écrire votre nom en
both of
lettres
you
capitales
Oui,
have just
et
decided
sans
to
savoir que l'autre le
non,
faisait
create
à
your
peu près au
names in
même
all
moment.
capital letters
C'est
at about the same
effectivement,
time.
quand on est historien d'art, on
And
a
when you're
tendance à
an art
supposer qu'il y
historian,
avait
you
des
start
échanges
to
extrêmement réguliers,
extrapolate
extrêmement
and
fructueux entre les
think
unes et les autres, alors
about,
que vous étiez
well, there might have been some type of
extrêmement
uh,
isolés.
oui,
uh,
on s'est connus vraiment beaucoup plus
fruitful
tard. On s'est
relationship
rencontrés
between the two,
vraiment
but
beaucoup
no,
plus
you
tard.
didn't know each other at all. Oh, we met
Marina
much
Abramovic
later.
est devenue une
Marina
amie.
Abramovich became
Il
a
y a eu
friend.
vraiment beaucoup de choses, mais beaucoup plus
There
tard,
were,
quand on
I
a
mean,
eu
we
des
have a
Android
relationship
dans
now,
la
but that
poche,
came
quand il y a eu
much,
de
much
l'Internet, quand il y a eu
later when we
des
had,
sites
now that we have
web.
phones in our
C'est
pockets,
tout, il n'y a pas très longtemps
websites,
que tout a changé.
webcams. But
Et
it hasn't been that long
effectivement, tous les gens n'ont peut-être pas
since things
conscience de
really
cela.
changed like
Certains
that and
rappellent que
pivoted.
Art Press, par exemple,
I just
qui a
want to
longtemps été
remind you
une
that
revue
Art
très
Press,
influente en France pour l'art
which
contemporain, n'a été créée qu'en
is an
1972.
important
À l'époque, Orlan
contemporary
venait
art
déjà de
magazine,
20 ans. Et quand Art Press a été créé,
and
c'était
Art
vraiment un
Press was
magazine très
created,
pointu,
and
lu
it was
par
a
très
very
peu de gens. Donc il faut
specific
bien voir que cette pionnière, ces pionnières de
sector
l'art
magazine
contemporain
that
de
not many
l'époque
people
numéro 1 en
read.
France étaient vraiment très isolées pour se rendre
And
compte maintenant de la prouesse que ça
you
représente
were featured in
d'avoir
there
créé ces
Alors,
différentes œuvres.
quand on vivait dans une
when we,
capitale, c'était
when you
différent.
live in the capital city,
Un peu, en tout cas,
it's
surtout à New
different,
York.
at least, for
Mais
example, in New
moi
York.
qui vivais
But
à
I
Saint-Étienne, une
lived in
petite
Saint-Étienne,
ville
a
de la Loire,
small city
c'était
in the Loire
hallucinant. Nous
Valley.
étions une bande
So
de jeunes
we were a group of young
qui étaient des
people,
machines désirantes. On
and we
n'arrêtait
were
pas
just
de se
these
dire,
desirable,
alors demain, qu'est-ce qu'on fait?
machines
On va les
uh,
surprendre, on va faire un truc pas possible.
seeking
Et
out experiences,
on faisait dans
full
la
of
rue ou
desire.
dans
So
un
we went to
appartement
the
des
street,
choses
or
où on montrait
we
des
went to
œuvres,
people's apartments. We
mais
showed our work. We did
on
things.
avait 10 personnes qui venaient.
But there were,
Quand
we
il y en
had
avait 20,
10
c'était un
people who would
succès.
come see
Quand il y en
us.
avait 30, on
And
se
when
posait la
30 people would
question,
come,
est-ce
we
que là, on
thought,
n'a pas fait quelque chose de trop
maybe
facile?
we did something
Est-ce
too
que ça,
simple,
c'était
too
intéressant
easily
de le
accessible.
faire? Déjà, tout le monde le sait.
I guess
Donc,
everyone
vous voyez, une
understands it.
époque,
So
c'est
at
très
that
difficile.
time,
J'en parle beaucoup dans mon
and
livre,
I
mon
talk a lot
autobiographie.
about this in
Mais
my
si on
autobiography,
ne fait pas l'effort
if we don't make
de
an
se replacer dans
effort
cette époque, et
to
je pense que
go
c'est
back to
beaucoup
this
d'écrire
era
œuvres
and
d'art
try to
pareilles,
understand it,
si on ne fait pas l'effort de se
if
replacer
we
dans
don't
l'époque de Rubens, de
try to
Caravage
go back to
ou de
Rubens and
Botticelli, on ne se rend
Caravaggio
pas compte
and Botticelli,
de ce qui se passait.
it's hard
Et
for us to
ceux
understand.
qui
We
les ont
can't
remplacés
understand what was happening then and what they were trying to do and what they were doing as pioneers. So what is your position, Orlan, with regard to reenactments? So to re-perform older performances in an analog fashion, like some people do? Or do you believe that a performance just has this immediacy to it, and it's just a moment that once it has been performed, that it should never be recreated again? No, I think that it's absurd to not recreate a performance. That's too easy. So when we have a different audience or we have a different space in which we're performing, that has an impact, that changes things. And there's a reinterpretation that's completely different. So if I think of the mesurage des mesures, mesurage de rue, measures, ra, ra. So that's the way I wrote it. Measure in small letters and then rage, rage in capitals. So your body is something with which public, private spaces are measured. So if you think about plastic material arts, is an Orlan corps. It's basically something that we can use to measure the world. It's a little bit abstract, less abstract, excuse me, at that point. So, contrary to other performers, you don't have your performances be reinterpreted or re-performed by other performers. No, your body, as we were discussing, gives a lot of the meaning to your performances. So, for example, Marina Abramovic might do that, but Marina asks young women to recreate her performance. Have you ever asked other people to perform your art, or does it really have to be Orlan doing that? No, I've never done that because I believe it would be instrumentalizing these people. Each artist does what he or she wants, and I've been imitated quite a bit. So many have tried to imitate me, but I have a concept. I have a work that's developed. It's like a thread. I created a work called Striptease using the sheets from my dowry. And of course, in that performance, I work with sheets from my dowry. I take my clothes off little by little while citing the Venus of Botticelli, instances from art history, and so striptease for a woman is not, I mean, is impossible because we can take our clothes off, but we cannot ever fully be unclothed or naked of all of the comparisons that are put upon us or the fantasies that are made about us. So we are dressed, we are covered by all of those projections, everything that's projected onto us. So we've had discussions about what you're presenting here. So you're presenting vintage things that are smaller pieces and also reprints that are larger format pieces. And I think that it's quite interesting, the reasoning behind that. You're very attached to your vintage prints, but you believe that later prints in a larger format has another meaning to it. Can you explain to why this dichotomy? So the vintage prints is important to you, but the larger prints, the reprints also have a specific meaning for you.
j'ai fait au
It's
tout début
complicated. I'm going to try
de
to be
mes
brief.
œuvres une série qui
So when I
s'appelle
started out, I created a series
Corps Sculpture.
called
Et
Body
effectivement, pour
Sculpture,
moi,
corps
d'abord,
sculpture.
le corps,
For me,
bien sûr, est politique.
the
Le
body is
privé est
political.
politique.
The private
Tout ce
sphere is
qu'on fait, tout
political.
ce qu'on dit
Everything that we do and
est
say
politique.
is political.
Mais attends, c'était quoi ta question? Tout à coup, je me suis
So what
perdu.
was I saying? I just lost
le vintage,
my
l'œuvre originale,
train of
et le
thinking.
retirage
Alors,
ultérieur
j'ai
possible.
fait
So
toutes
right,
ces séries
what is the difference between
de
the
corps
vintage printed
sculpture en prenant le
works
corps
and
comme une sculpture.
the large format? So I see
Et
the body as a
en
sculpture,
fait, je croyais avoir perdu
and I
absolument toutes les photos
felt like I had
et même
lost
les
all of my
pellicules.
photos and even my
Et
film.
un
I
jour,
believe
en
I
déménageant,
did. And one day, moving house,
tombant d'un livre,
I found a book.
j'avais une petite enveloppe
I had a small
qui était
envelope in there
pleine
that was
de
full
petites planches contact
of
d'écriture.
small contact sheets
Et
of images.
quand Régis Durand m'a fait une
And when
grande
Régis Durand
rétrospective à
did a
l'hôtel de
retrospective
Rothschild,
of my
au
work at the
CNP,
Hotel de Rothschild
quand il a vu
at the CNP, when he saw that contact sheet,
il est tombé en pamoison
he nearly fainted.
parce qu'il y avait effectivement
He
dans ces
said
petites vignettes
that, in
tout
those
ce que j'ai fait
small
après.
vignettes,
C'est
he
hallucinant,
could see
c'était
everything that I'd done from that
c'était
moment.
absolument prémonitoire.
It was
Il y avait
a
tout. Alors, il
premonition.
a monté son exposition
So he set
en
up his
faisant
exhibition
encadrer ces petites
by
vignettes
framing
comme
these
ça,
small
qui
vignettes,
pour moi étaient
tiny,
uniquement faites
that for
pour
me,
choisir celles que j'allais agrandir.
had been
Parce que
made
depuis
just
le
so that I could
début,
choose the one that I was
moi,
going
ce
to
que je voulais,
enlarge.
c'est effectivement que le corps ne soit pas réduit, mais soit à sa réelle
So I didn't
dimension.
want the
Et que
body
ce que
to
je voulais
be
dire
reduced, but I wanted the body
s'affiche
to be at
réellement.
its correct
Et qu'on ne
size,
soit pas obligé de venir
and so that
voir
we,
de près
the public, wouldn't be obliged to,
comment je suis faite.
go and see how I made,
Donc,
what my body's
ce
like.
petit vintage
So these small
était dans
little
la
vintage
première salle de
prints
l'exposition et
were
chacun
in the first
qu'il
part of
avait
the
choisi
exhibit,
introduisait
and
une des
each
salles de l'exposition.
vignette
Et
presented
alors, tout
one
le
of the
monde a
rooms of
adoré
the
ces
exhibit.
vintages, tout le monde a adoré
So everyone
ces
loved
petites
those
photos.
little
Mais
vintage
moi,
photos,
c'était très étrange pour moi. Parce
but it
que
was
ce que je
strange for
voulais,
me
c'est que le corps soit à dimension réelle. D'ailleurs,
because
j'ai poussé très loin dans la photo
I went
cette
very
idée-là,
far with
puisque jusqu'à
photography,
preuve du contraire, je suis la première artiste
because until
à
someone says
avoir
otherwise, I'm the
agrandi
first
des
artist
photos
to have enlarged
grandeur nature,
photos,
collées sur bois et
life
dessinées
size, and
pour
then
qu'elles sortent de la photo, qu'elles sortent
attach them to a
du
wood
mur,
backing so that they would
qu'elles
be
deviennent des sculptures dans l'espace,
hanging on the wall,
qu'elles
yet
prennent une
not
place, qu'elles s'inscrivent
flush with the wall,
dans l'espace.
so that would create
Donc, on a
an entirely different
effectivement sur le
space.
stand à 18
So at
deux effigies
the
de moi
A18 booth,
où on
we
voit
have two
très bien
effigies of me,
ce que j'ai
and we
voulu
can
faire.
see
Et on le voit
exactly what I
aussi dans
wanted to
Baiser
do at that
l'artiste, on
point.
le voit
We can
dans
also see it in the
beaucoup
artist's
d'œuvres
kiss,
que
Baiser
j'ai faites avec
l'artiste.
ça.
And I did that with a lot
Donc,
of
vous
my
voyez,
different work.
quand on est artiste,
So when
souvent les
you're an
choses nous
artist,
échappent.
often,
Vous savez, beaucoup
things kind of
d'artistes ont des
go over our
vintages,
heads, and
mais
we
c'est
don't
souvent des choses
realize
qu'ils vont
things in the
retrouver
moment. But
qui sont de
these
petits
little
formats.
vintage, small format
Ça ne veut pas
prints,
dire que eux voulaient que ce soit des petits formats. Mais souvent,
I didn't find them
c'était
important, but
pour des problèmes financiers.
they
Parce
were
que
small
ça
format,
coûtait
perhaps because
d'agrandir une
they
œuvre
were
à grandeur
expensive. It was
nature.
expensive to
Et
enlarge
à cette époque-là, c'est
an
pas tous
image to a
les
life-size
laboratoires qui
image,
le faisaient,
and there
etc.
weren't many
Donc
photo
toujours
labs who did
pareil,
that. So
il faut agir comme un détective
you have to work
et se
like a
demander ce qui
detective
se passait à cette
and
époque-là
try to
quand
understand
ça a
what was
été
going
fait.
on at that
Je trouve ça
time
vraiment très
when
intéressant, oui, quand
those
on rencontre les
small
artistes,
prints were
de
made.
pouvoir discuter avec
It's so
eux.
interesting when
C'est
you
vrai que
meet
le
an artist
collectionneur a
to
souvent cette
discuss with the artist.
fascination pour le
A
vintage,
collector
sans
is
forcément avoir
fascinated
conscience de
by these
l'intentionnalité de
older
l'artiste
prints
et de la dimension
without
très précise,
understanding
très
the
matérielle,
intentions
qui fait
behind
que parfois
those
l'artiste a
images.
été obligé de créer
Because the
dans
artist was perhaps
l'immédiateté une œuvre
obliged to
en tenant compte
create
de ces contraintes,
with that
et que des années
immediacy,
après, les contraintes s'étant desserrées
and with certain constraints, financial, technological constraints, that specific image in that format. And then later, the artist will create that image, perhaps that as it corresponds more fully to what they were attempting to do at that time. So I do invite everyone to head over to that booth to see those effigies of you. And that presents the exhibition Orlan Corps, Orlan's body. So the occasional striptease, it was called, using the sheets from your hope chest, from your dowry. Yes, that was a work that was created for photography. So yes, there were performances that were performed for photography, to be captured with photography. So, when you cite Venus of Botticelli in History of Art, I worked a lot with that image and Botticelli's work with paintbrushes and paints. Botticelli, he did retouching, beauty retouching, like we do with Photoshop. He eliminated wrinkles, hairs, and he refined the image. It's like what we do with a filter or with Photoshop when we want to send a selfie. So performances of yours that aren't as well known have allowed you to escape from your the sad destiny of a woman, as you say, that to which you were destined.
Et donc, pour une femme de ta génération, il était très important de réaliser son trousseau. Et tu as réalisé toute une
She had an activity, she was quite a seamstress. So the fact that you're using these sheets that you had to have, so you embroidered things on these, and there were traces of sperm that had been left by your lovers on those sheets. So what does that mean? So yes, society puts us into a specific role. My mother taught me to make, cookies. She taught me to embroider. And I'm not sure that you know what this means anymore. Those here, the young people who are here, but in your dowry, your hope chest, you had sheets, and you had to embroider those sheets. You had to hem them. I don't know if you know what jour. You had to prepare these sheets to be used when you got married. I don't know if you understand what that means. You have to put, you're pulling threads. You're preparing these sheets. It was crazy. So of course, no, there was no way that I was going to submit myself to do that type of thing. So I took these sheets, I stretched them on canvases to paint on them. But I also did another type of painting. I took them to when I was with my lovers, and I asked them to ejaculate in a certain spot. And then I had another lover. I had him ejaculate in another area. I didn't want them to be mixed. No, I mean, this is not fake news. But if you have to make it artsy. So I used La Vie just to make these artsy, and it didn't take where there was sperm. So the rest, of the fabric was like a sponge, and it absorbed it all. So unlike my mother, I used black embroidery thread, and I created a performance, or I looked at the audience while finding these blotches of sperm, or I'd cover my eyes, and I can't tell you what I embroidered. So you see, sometimes things happened like that. So I embroidered quite a bit. I embroidered those sheets, and there are a lot of works that no, we didn't. We have, in the booth we couldn't present all of my work, but there's a beautiful Madonna on a black background that introduces kind of this these sheets. So the reutilization of these sheets, we have the Madonna. There's kind of like a logical progression of this female figure. Predetermined by society. So the Madonna, the Virgin, black or white, those figures are integrated into my work. I also, Le Baiser de l'Artiste, the artist's kiss, there's my effigy that is, wood-backed, and then there's Orlan body. So I was able to add candles like in church, for 5 francs. And so to really have this artist's kiss with tongue. And so, of course, that had to take place at the Grand Palais. Yes, it took place at the Grand Palais, but you kind of entered there illegally. So you kind of imposed your presence there by organizing your performance outside of the Grand Palais. And finally, it was so successful that they asked you to, well, no, they didn't technically ask me, but I allowed myself, I gave myself the authorization to do my performance inside. So yes, this was a difficult performance to set up, but because I was ejected from the Grand Palais, I was underneath the columns, and I was right smack in the middle. You really couldn't not see me. Where all of the officials from the FIAC, there was the minister of that time, the director of this art fair, the FIAC. So they took this work. It's a very large artwork. They, took it on their shoulders, and it was almost like a procession. And they had it, under the stairs. So, and they entered the Grand Palais with that artwork. And all the directors from the FIAC who had ejected me, who didn't want me doing this horrible performance, they pretended like it was a planned performance, to not make waves. So the procession passed in front of them, and they followed the procession into the Grand Palais. So I love that. So I was fired from the school that I taught at. It was kind of like a high school where we trained mediators, animators. So I received a telegram, which was not legal at the time. And the telegram said, your attitude over the past few days is incompatible with your role as a teacher. All of your classes are suspended, and you will receive your final pay. So from 1 minute to the next, I have no more money to pay my monthly, my monthly fees for my workshop. I was kicked out. I was evicted. I lost a lot of my film from that time. I talk about that in my book. So it was really, I was enraged. I've had a lot of moments like that in my life. I didn't know where to sleep. I didn't know what to eat. But there are a lot of ins and outs to this story, because this artwork was sold and bought by the FRAC from the Loire Valley, and of course, this piece is still moving around the globe. It's still requested quite a bit by institutions, and so what I really loved was that for the 40th anniversary of the FNAC, they demanded that piece be returned. It was the entrance on the wall. They noted that this is one of the artworks that has most marked this era. That's quite incredible. Do you believe, Orlan, that today you could perform some of those performances that you did in the 70s? For example, in Portugal, when you were dressed in your own nudity, let's say it that way, when I mean, didn't you believe that at that time maybe performance was a little more exciting, a little more, there were a lot of things that were allowed? Yes, well, the police tried to arrest me, but I had a dress that was just photography, a photo of myself nude. So those things didn't exist though, but I had this dress that was a nude representation of myself, but I was covered from my head to my feet. So obviously I brought my bag, my purse, so I had my passport, thank goodness, all my papers, and they tried to arrest me in Portugal, but they couldn't because they didn't know what to say. They didn't know what box to check. I mean, what exactly had I done wrong? Yes, in the Vatican, there was also an episode. How were you able to get on the floor, on your hands and knees? How were you able to negotiate with the police? Oh, well, the guards came. They said, no, you do not have the right to do that. It was between the columns of St. Peter's Square. And I said, you can't arrest me. And they said, why? And I said, but because I made a wish. You can't arrest me. I made a wish. I have to absolutely fulfill this wish. So I have to be on my hands and knees and go throughout the entire square. So, and they let me do it. So I didn't have the time to put my dress on, that was a photo of my naked body. Yes, for mesurage. When was the last time that you did that performance? It was in the museum in Ivoirol, in Petersburg, in the United States. But I could still do some mesurage. So we have gone over our time, but no, you're gonna have to pay me a lot of money to get me to stop talking. So, any questions? Why don't you all come to the booth and we will be available to answer your questions? So, A18, Orlan, for those of you who are interested, she will be signing her book. And I think that this book is very important for young women. It's pedagogical, it's educational, and I think it's healthy. Thank you. See you at the stand. See you in the booth.